Hey guys, welcome to our lesson on logos, pathos, and ethos. This is on chapters 2 to 4 of our book. I am going to cover each one and give you examples of each, and then after this lesson, there is a quiz that you need to take. Now, before we get started, I do want to set up this class in a proper way, and before we can even write about arguments, I think it's first important to know, how you should be doing critical reading in a class like this. What does that mean? Obviously, you're going to have to do a lot of research, and with our first essay coming up, that research is going to include maybe online sources, maybe sources that you find from our library. So the first thing that you will always want to do whenever you find a source is identify the author. Always know who is the writer of a particular piece of work. The place of publication, that's just kind of like the source, it might be the New York Times, it might be npr.org, and the title of whatever you're using. Now, everything has a title. Even if it's a podcast, it's going to have a title. So I did want to give you guys an example. Let's say I'm doing some online research, and in my online research, just to show you, I'm researching marriage, and I happen to find this article right here. Now, notice that this article is from health.harvard.edu. It is a legitimate educational source. Now, according to the rules, and I'm going to go back to it and just so we can look at it back and forth, it says identify the author, identify the place of publication, and the title. So let's see if we can do this. Who is the author? Right here, Robert Schmerling. What is the place of publication? It's actually written down here, Harvard Health. This is, obviously a segment of Harvard University. And then, of course, the title of this is called The Health Advantages of Marriage. Those are the three things that you need when you're writing. So it's important to remember that whenever you are finding a source, you are going to need to identify those three things. Sometimes you will find a source that does not have an author listed. It might say staff writer, and that's okay. That's what you're going to write according to the staff writer of Harvard University. So if there's no author listed, the next thing you do is you look and see, okay, is there some kind of like a staff writer? And then you can use that title. Now, again, when you're doing critical reading, you do need to look for the thesis of the work that you're using. So you're going to do a lot of research, right? And sometimes the thesis is going to be very straightforward, and sometimes it's not. So here's the thing. It says identify thesis, and the thesis is going to be a claim and a rationale. What position is the person taking, and what's the reasoning for their position? So I wanted to give you an example. Now, look at this example right here. It says, burning the American flag as a political act of protest against the government's policies is a perfectly justifiable act that can be construed as patriotic. So notice that a thesis like this leaves absolutely no doubt in your mind. It's very clear-cut. It's very direct. It's very simple. You know that the person that's writing this thesis is flat out, I was going to say against flag burning, but it says it's perfectly justifiable. Sorry, the opposite way, that this person is actually protecting the act of burning the American flag, so flag burning. The second part that I wanted to show you guys, now this is about the rationale, the reasoning. Now, notice how when you put these two together, you can have a very well-rounded thesis, because one of these sentences shows us the position very clearly. The other sentence shows us the reasoning very clearly. So it says, despite what many conservative thinkers want us to believe in reference to flag burning, patriotism is not practiced by worshiping an object and blindly accepting the wrong decisions of our government. On the contrary, it is best practiced when taking a stand and raising a voice against injustice. So that's a very interesting combo. Like if we were to put these two together, we would have a very clear claim, and we would have reasons for that claim. Now, this is just an example, obviously, but whatever you are reading, whatever text, whatever article you come across, I always want you guys to be able to identify the thesis of that article. You're also going to be asked to write a thesis, and these are the kind of thesis statements that I'm looking for. One that has a claim, this right here, and one that has a rationale, this right here. Now, also, when you write, before, again, we go into different persuasive techniques, I think it's important to understand what the difference is between a summary and a paraphrase. Now, when you're going to find research, you're going to end up using that research in your writing, and you are going to want to summarize what this research is about. And I think the best analogy that I can use is the analogy of a forest right here. So one thing to maybe associate with each part. A summary is going to be a long shot of the forest. So a bird's eye view of the forest. You're looking at the forest from like a helicopter. What are you going to see? You're going to see the top of the trees, right? You're going to see vast greenery. But if you land your helicopter and you enter the forest, what are you going to see? A lot like this. You're going to see the green, you're going to see the bark of the trees, you're going to see a lot more detail. So that is the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing. Summarizing gives you an overview. This is what the text is about. Paraphrasing is going to zoom in on one part of the text. So you're going to put that part of the text in your own words, and that is what a paraphrase is. Now, if you guys would like more information on this, because this is all stuff that you're supposed to have learned in English 101, I would really like you to check out page 5 of my syllabus, because that will give you a good reminder of the difference between these two methods of using text. Now, I want to give you an example just to practice. So I love Shakespeare, and for me, anytime I get a chance to use Shakespeare, I'm very excited. So I just want to do a little exercise together using Sonnet 116, and of course, I don't want to read this sonnet out loud. Why don't we have somebody who sounds so good in a British accent reading it out loud? I chose Tom Hiddleston's version, and here it is.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out, even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
All right. I mean, he can read the dictionary and make it sound good. So now the real exercise that I would like to do with you guys is, why not? Let's just take a moment and practice the act of summarizing versus paraphrasing. Now, in order to do a summary of this sonnet, I have to be able to understand what the sonnet is saying overall. So what is this sonnet about? If you want, you can press pause and think about it, maybe write down some of your notes. If you're ready, basically, according to my interpretation, this sonnet is about love, but it's not just about any kind of love. This sonnet is about true love, what it means to truly love someone. And the sonnet basically gives us a definition of that love. And that would be the summary of the poem. Now notice, I could do this in one sentence. Maybe it might take 2 sentences, but it's just an overview. It's going to give you just kind of like a broad recap of what the poem is about. Paraphrasing, though, requires a little bit more close reading skills. So I decided I'm going to paraphrase this top section of the sonnet with you guys. In order to paraphrase, you have to break the work down line by line. You cannot manipulate the language. You only have to put whatever it is the writer is saying in your own words. So the first thing that the writer says, Shakespeare writes, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments." So what are impediments? First of all, we have to understand that impediments are imperfections, flaws. So let me not, like if you think you have found true love, let me not rain on your parade. That's what he's basically saying. He goes on to say, "Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds." So alteration means to change, right? So love is not real love that will change when it finds reasons to change. So it's kind of like the implication here is that, when it finds something undesirable or unattractive in the other person, it's not going to change. Or bends with the remover to remove. So once again, this love, this great love, is not going to bend when it sees a reason to bend or a reason to remove this person from your life or notices like a imperfection in this person. This is the classic line. I love it. "Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken." So an ever fixed mark basically means it's something that does not move, kind of like a compass. It just kind of like stands firmly in place. And it says it looks on tempests. Tempests are storms. They're violent storms. But despite the storms that it encounters, it's never shaken. I mean, how beautiful is that? So in a way, there's this metaphor of a storm. And this metaphor is of life's challenges, life's problems. But these life's problems will not break the true love that a person has. It's very, very beautiful. We could go line by line and interpret, all of the poem. But what I wanted to show you is that this entire, what we did just now, this breakdown that we did is called paraphrasing, where we took each line and we basically translated it into language that is more of our own. And that is the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing. Please know the difference, especially when you are using text. Now we are ready to talk about, when, again, you're going to be using text for a variety of reasons. And obviously, the main goal when you write is to convince your audience. You're trying to write persuasively. And in order to do so, we need these 3 things. So we're going to take a moment and talk about each one, pathos, ethos, and logos. You've already read about it in the chapters that I assigned. And now I would like to just zoom in a little bit more and clarify what each one means. Let's start with pathos. I would say this is the simplest method of persuasion. This method requires the human element. This is what I call it. It is the human element because this is the part where we can all relate. We all have emotions, and obviously a lot of times we get persuaded on behalf of an argument because of our emotional investment in it. Obviously, this technique can go wrong in so many ways, but we're not talking about logical fallacies right now. We're just talking about pathos. And obviously, a person who knows how to argue well, like a good orator, a good debater, is going to know how to use pathos appropriately. I also want to let you know that pathos does not just mean positive or negative emotions. It could be any kind of emotion being used in an argument. So I have probably, I don't know, the most heart-wrenching example to show you. Let me just first establish a little backstory. I am going to show you a commercial advertisement that the key persuasive element being used is pathos. Now, obviously, there's a lot that you're going to feel when you watch this emotion. I cried throughout all of it. I probably will cry again when I watch it with you guys, if I'm being honest. It reminds me of my beautiful dog who passed away last year. And, you know, obviously the commercial is just trying to sell a car, but there's a technique that the commercial is using, and it's this technique that really highlights the relationship that humans have with their pets, you know, with their dogs. So without further ado, let me play this commercial for you guys so you can also experience it.
Big windows and lots of light. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? Are you breaking up with me?
Slow and steady.
Trans, the official sudden vantage spectacles.
Maddie.
All right, so that was the commercial that I wanted to show you guys. It was very, very emotional to watch it again, and I'm sure all of you or a lot of you relate to this if you are a pet owner. What are the target emotions here? So it might be useful to analyze that first and foremost. You know, we're supposed to feel this sense of nurture for an animal. This happens a lot. When we get to our presentation unit, which is on advertising, we're going to talk about this in a little more detail. And it's going to be really about the emotional appeals that a lot of advertisers use to get us to buy their products, you know, and this is done all the time in advertisement. And obviously, you know, Chevy is looking to profit off of us, but ultimately they want to sell us this idea of family and this idea of friendship, and the feelings that we're supposed to, you know, feel when we're watching a commercial like this is really the nurturing aspect, the protective aspect, the love that we feel for an animal. And that, my friends, is an example of pathos. And just to let you know, pathos is necessary in every single argument, because if you don't include pathos, then your argument is missing a serious human element to it. And we all, you know, that's one thing that we all have in common, the human element. That means that we all are capable of feeling emotions. And one way to target us and to convince us and to persuade us is to get to our emotions. Now, the second appeal is called ethos. Again, I want to, you know, make sure I explain this well, and then I do have an example that I'm going to show you guys. So ethos is an argument that quite literally ethos means ethics. And so it's more of like the ethical appeal in your argument. But I like to call it credibility or authority. I think it's a simpler way of understanding ethos. So, it's kind of like the question of what makes your argument credible? What does make your argument credible? Well, using information that comes from credible people. So respectable people, respectable institutions, what is trusted in our society, that's all going to help build ethos when we write. So I made a little list here. These are just examples. And I wanted to just show you guys, what kind of like our society considers credible people. Well, it's usually people that have, high degrees. We tend to think that they know what they're talking about, like professors, doctors, and so on. So obviously it sounds a lot better when I say, instead of Joe Schmo says this, I say Professor PhD Joe Schmo says this. And so obviously it builds more credibility for that person. Award winners, obviously if there are some distinguished awards in certain fields, like the Nobel Prize, if you're an actor, it would be the Academy Award. That all kind of adds to the trustworthiness, to the credibility of the person. People who are socially respected and admired. And I put, obviously, who in our society deserves or usually receives a lot of respect? Well, teachers. Maybe, in our local church, that it would be the pastor, the priest, the rabbi. Maybe our local police officer, we turn to them whenever we're in trouble, after all. So obviously, socially respected professions, maybe. Also, organizations that are maybe nonprofit, they do a lot of work for the community, like Red Cross. We see the Red Cross truck all the time at GCC, don't we? They want our blood to be donated because they want to help people with all of those blood donations. Maybe some government groups, maybe some successful businesses that have been around. And that leads me to the next point, businesses that have been around for a long period of time, and we're talking about for like over a decade, these businesses tend to establish higher ethos. So just to give you guys an example, Guess, the brand, it was established since 1981. That's a long time. And obviously, consider how much has changed since 1981 to today. A lot. And so obviously Guess has stood the test of time. And a lot of these companies that have existed for a long time, they kind of like earn more respect as a result. I think Abercrombie was established in like the 1890s. I don't remember the exact date, but it's still a very long time. Aeropostale, there's another brand, was like 1987. So again, it might be interesting if you do or own an article of clothing, you might want to take a look at it. Sometimes sweaters, they have dates of establishment written on them. That's the company trying to brag about its ethos. Obviously, if I opened my company last year, I'm not about to put the date on my sweater. It's like, established in 2021. And it's like, you haven't been around for very long. But if I've been around for a long time, you bet I'm going to brag about it. My next two pieces of advice, they're not really they are examples, but it's more like advice that I can give you on how you can write so that your ethos can be stronger. Just the simple way of the way that you are introducing your sources. So notice over here I put Sonnet 130 by the world famous author William Shakespeare. Now I could just say written by Shakespeare and everyone will know what I'm talking about. But world famous author is a way that I'm trying to establish the ethos in my writing. Look at this other example. In the essay, I Just Want to Be Average, Professor Mike Rose writes about his experiences. I could just say Mike Rose, but it's just not the same as writing Professor Mike Rose, because Mike Rose does have a PhD. You know, he went to UCLA. So you didn't know that. Obviously, if you haven't, you're not familiar with the writer, it's always nice to build the credibility of that person. And finally, one way that you can build credibility is grammatical correctness. Let's face it, grammatical correctness a lot of times equals your education level. And so people take you more seriously when you sound smarter. You sound like what you're talking about. Obviously, if you get like this email from me and I'm your English teacher and it's filled with grammatical mistakes, maybe some of you are going to be like, does she really deserve to be our teacher? And of course, mistakes happen, right? I might have just not proofread that email and just sent it out. But again, it's all part of ethos. The grammatical correctness does help to bring a little bit more trustworthiness and credibility to the writer. Now, I'm going to give you this example, and I do want to contextualize it first, because maybe some of you have not watched 8 Mile, or you're not familiar, with Eminem or the film. Here is a little bit of context, and I'm going to establish it so that you guys understand what it is I'm asking you to look for in this scene. I'm going to play the final rap battle in 8 Mile. Eminem, or I don't know what his name was in the film, whatever his name is, he basically was bullied by these guys throughout the entire film. And at the same time, he's writing his lyrics, he's establishing himself as a rapper, he oftentimes goes to these rap battles, and these rap battles are amazing because they're like spur of the moment. You have to think of the lyrics on the spot. You get, let's say, a certain amount of time, whether it's 30 seconds, whether it's a minute, and you have to battle your opponent. And then at the end, obviously, the crowd pleaser wins. And in this final rap battle, this is kind of like Eminem is coming into this scene, having gone through a lot. These guys, the guys that were bullying him, they beat him up. They had sex with his girlfriend. They're constantly harassing him. They're also making fun of the fact that, he's a white rapper, so they don't take him seriously. They're like, oh, you're a white boy. You live in a trailer. You live with your mom, and all of these things. So here's Eminem and the way that he builds his own character through the final battle. So I just want you to notice the little techniques that he uses. He basically turns everything bad that happened to him, he turns it as part of his narrative, as part of his story. So without further ado, let me play that rap battle.
What do you want to do? Heads or tails? Heads. Heads. Okay. Who goes first? Let that bitch go first. Whoa. I can't believe my ears. All right. Hey, check this out. We got new rules. Being a championship round, each of these cats, they get a minute and a half apiece. I don't know what's going to happen. You ready? You know what to do? DJ, kick that shit. did get jumped by all 6 of you chumps. And we did fuck my girl. I'm still standing here screaming fuck the free world. You'll never try to judge me, dude. You don't know what the fuck I've been through. But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook, that's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You embarrassed? This guy's a gangster? His real name is Clarence. And Clarence was the home of both parents. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. This guy don't want to battle. He's shook. There ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. He's scared to death. He's scared to look at his fucking yearbook. Fuck Cranbrook. Fuck a beat. I go a cappella. Fuck a Papa Doc. Fuck a clock. Fuck a trailer. Fuck everybody. Fuck y'all if you doubt me. I'm a piece of fucking white trash. I say it proudly. And fuck this battle. I don't want to win. I'm outie. Here, tell these people something they don't know about me.
If you guys have not seen that movie, it is worth it to watch. I think that last battle scene is just a very, very unique, granted, but also a very good demonstration of ethos because, in this entire film, there's, Eminem, or whoever his character is, and he kind of is struggling throughout the entire film. He's dirt poor. He's just trying to make it into the rap world, and nothing seems to ever be going his way. And it's like, how do you use all of these experiences, and all of these negatives, and how do you use them as a positive? And in that final battle, he comes across as just very honest, and that honesty creates trust in the audience. And notice he won the audience over because of his honesty, because of his authenticity. So I thought I would give that as an example. Sure, he's not a professional in a field or any of these things up here, but at the same time, he still won respect. And he did that by establishing his own character. Very skillful way, by the way. And finally, the last persuasive technique is the use of logos. So I do have an example of logos from the movie Liar Liar, but then I thought, first, let me just explain what logos is. So if pathos is the use of emotion and ethos is the use of ethics, credibility, trust, logos is the use of reason and logic. And this is probably the most important part of an argument because without your reason, you cannot win an argument. Obviously, all three are absolutely necessary, but logos is the heart of your argument. You have to come prepared with the facts if you want to win an argument. So I put over here some of the most common types of logos. It could be statistics, surveys, definitions, polls, anything that requires, technical reasoning would be deemed as logos. I also think it's a good opportunity to just very briefly mention two types of logos, which we are going to go over when we talk about chapter 7. So the first type is called deduction. And I love this type of logos. This is the kind that is like a mental evaluation process. It's kind of like your mind going through the steps of an argument one by one. And by going through those steps, your mind realizes that it understands the conclusion. It's like, that math problem, find X. And then you have to go through certain work in order to find the answer, X equals and whatever the answer may be. And so I gave you an example of a crime case. So I put it at the bottom here. The evidence of a crime case often leads to the truth about the crime. Obviously, if there's enough evidence. The truth lies in each piece of evidence, and by using deduction, the investigators analyze and reach the correct conclusion. I thought that the movie Legally Blonde had a very good example of deduction, just in its entire process. So Elle is the main character, and she's studying to be a lawyer, And obviously she's still a student, but she's kind of like, she's prosecuting this case. Actually, she's a defense attorney in the case because the defendant is hired her as her lawyer. She's trying to defend herself, saying, I did not commit a certain crime. Now, again, you're going to notice that in this court case, in this court scene, Elle suddenly realizes a truth. And she does that by breaking up the case, by looking at it piece by piece, and by seeing the truth inside of each piece, which leads to a logical conclusion. So here is that scene.
Miss Wyndham, what had you done earlier that day?
I got up, got a latte, went to the gym, got a perm, came home.
Well, you got in the shower?
I believe the witness has made it clear that she was in the shower.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Wyndham, had you ever gotten a perm before?
Yes,
How many would you say?
2 a year since I was 12. You do the math.
You know, a girl in my sorority, Tracy Marcinko, got a perm once. We all tried to talk her out of it. Girls wanted to look for her. She didn't have her bone structure. But thankfully, that same day, she entered the Beta Delta Pi Wet T-shirt contest where she was completely hosed down from head to toe.
Objection! Why is this relevant?
Oh, I have a point, I promise.
Then make it.
Tell me, why is it that Tracy Marcinko's curls were ruined when she got hosed down?
Because they got wet?
Exactly. Because isn't it the first cardinal rule of perm maintenance that you're forbidden to wet your hair for at least 24 hours after getting a perm at the risk of deactivating the ammonium thioglycolate?
Yes.
And wouldn't somebody who's had, say, 30 perms before in their life be well aware of this rule? And if in fact you weren't washing your hair, as I suspect you weren't because your curls are still intact, wouldn't you have heard the gunshot? And if in fact you had heard the gunshot, Brooke Wyndham wouldn't have had time to hide the gun before you got downstairs, which would mean that you would have had to have found Mrs. Wyndham with a gun in her hand to make your story plausible. Isn't that right?
She's my age. Did she tell you that? How would you feel if your father married someone who was your age?
You, however, had time to hide the gun, didn't you, Chutney? After you shot your father.
I didn't mean to shoot him. I thought it was you walking through the door.
Order! Order! Order!
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Bailiff, take the witness into custody where she will be charged for the murder of Hayworth Wyndham. In the matter of the state versus Brooke Wyndham, this case is dismissed.
All right. So, again, it's a comedy and it's not based on reality at all. But did you guys see that process of deduction, how she just figures it out? How does she do that? By putting these pieces together and realizing, oh, wait, this person's story is just not plausible. And it's, she's lying about something because there are facts in it that she was able to disprove. Now, the second type of logos is called induction. And inductive reasoning is based on past patterns. So based on observations from the past on what's occurred in the past, we can infer what is likely to happen in the future. So I wanted to give you guys a very typical statistic. And it's not just about sex offenders, but it's usually about, most offenders in general. But sex offenders particularly, this tends to be true, that statistically sex offenders who come out of a prison term tend to repeat the same crime. So there's an argument that still exists today. It's been made for over like 10, 15 years that imprisonment is not an effective form of punishment for this particular crime. For sex offenders because it doesn't really deter them from committing the same crime again. So, you can look at the statistics too. It's actually pretty consistent. So throughout statistics, throughout observation of how it was in the past, you can make that assessment that, okay, this is, an ineffective form of punishment for this group of people because they tend to repeat the same crime. But again, induction just means, you're kind of like using what you already know, what you already experienced, to make some kind of a decision or some kind of a guess about the future, about an action in the future. So deduction is that mental process of breaking it down. Induction is the process of kind of like forming a hypothesis of what's to come based on factual information from the past. And that, my friends, is logos. And I think the best demonstration I have for you guys is from the movie Liar, Liar. Now, check out this scene. This is, again, a courtroom scene. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the film, but Jim Carrey is literally not capable of lying. I forgot, the movie overall. I just remembered this scene. I was like, this is perfect. I have to use it. So I think it's worth a watch just one more time. But notice how he wins this case by all of the facts that he lists. And here goes that example.
Mr. Reed, it is out of sheer morbid curiosity I'm allowing this freak show to continue. Mrs. Cole, if you dare.
Mrs. Cole, is this a copy of your driver's license?
Yes.
It says here you're a blonde, are you? If you don't remember, perhaps Mr. Falk will.
Brunette.
We can play the tape again. Maybe it's on there.
I'm a brunette.
Thank you. Now let's see. Weight 105? Yeah, in your bra.
Your Honor, I object.
You would!
Bastard!
Hey, quiet! Overruled. Wait.
118. All right, fine. I'm 127.
Uh-huh. And it says here you were born in 1964. But that's not true either, is it? Is it?
No.
Can you tell me what it says here on your birth certificate under date of birth?
Your Honor, I object. What does this have to do with anything?
Overruled. Mrs. Cole, answer the question.
1965.
Now, let me get this straight. That would mean that you lied about your age to make yourself older. But why would any woman want to do that?
I changed it so I could get married.
And the truth shall set you free! My client lied about her age. She was only 17 when she got married, which makes her a minor. And in the great state of California, no minor can enter into any legal contract without parental consent, including
Prenuptial agreement.
prenuptial agreements. This contract is void. The fact that my client has been ridden more than Seattle slew is irrelevant. Standard community property applies, and she is entitled to half of the marital assets, or $11.395 million. Do you ever face that? Swoosh! And that's the game! Nothing further, Your Honor.
Order! In light of this new evidence, the court must rule in favor of Mrs. Cole. She is hereby awarded half the marital assets.
Son of a bitch!
All right. So I think it was a nice way of demonstrating logos. Notice how he just used facts to win his argument. There you go. So I wanted to conclude with a final clip that I have for you guys. This is probably one of the coolest movies that I've seen. It reminds me a lot of 1984, which I also teach in English 104. I'm just not teaching it this particular semester. And I think, one thing to remember is that a good argument is going to contain all three methods of persuasion, logos, pathos, and ethos, all three have to simultaneously work together in order to form a strong argument. And I think this is probably the best film example that I can give you. Now, just to establish a little bit of context, this film is about a very corrupt society, and this masked vigilante just comes out of nowhere, and he wants to make a change, you know, and he's kind of like standing up against the government. And how he does this is he breaks into the TV studio, and he broadcasts this message that he wants the public in the UK, I think it's specifically in London, to hear. And to basically be moved to action. So his goal is persuasion, and the techniques that he uses are logos, pathos, and ethos. So as we are watching this scene, I would really like you to pay attention to the way that he is employing each persuasive technique. And here is that last scene.
Dad, what's wrong with the telly?
Good evening, London. I want first to apologize for this emergency challenge. I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquility and repetition. I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration, whereby these important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak. I suspect even now orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way. Damn it! Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there?
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you're afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent.
Better? You're almost through.
Last night I sought to end that silence. Last night I destroyed the Old Bailey to remind this country of what it has forgotten. More than 400 years ago, a great citizen wished to embed the 5th of November forever in our memory. His hope was to remind the world that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So you've seen nothing. If the crimes of this government remain unknown to you, then I would suggest that you allow the 5th of November to pass unmarked. But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.
All right. The subtitles were not great because there were a lot of mistakes in it, but I think it still was...
Good evening.
Whoops. Sorry, it still is a great demonstration of all three elements. By the way, I am going to be posting this slideshow on Canvas so that if any of these links were hiccuping during this video, or if you would like to watch them again, please by all means feel free to open them up and watch them. I did spend a lot of time trying to research the best examples for you, and I think it's a decent amount. So I hope this lesson was helpful for you guys. I hope you learned something about pathos, ethos, and logos. And now I wish you good luck on your quiz.